today's episode of The Perfume Preppy, where we talk about all things fragrance. Before we get started today, be sure to click like and subscribe. That way you're notified when I release new fragrance-related content. So without further ado, let's get into it. When I first started this channel, I think one of my first videos, it might be even like my 5th video, was about fragrance-related do's and don'ts. So today, I want to do an updated version of that, where I'm not necessarily like just kind of bringing back those same tips, but just kind of some newer tips and newer things to keep in mind for people who, like fragrance like I do, or even just kind of people who are just kind of getting into that sort of thing. So the very first tip that I wanted to talk about is, buying like fragrance related gifts for people, whether it's for a birthday or for even like home fragrance, like sprays or any sort of like, thing like that, like potpourri, anything of the sort. When you know someone, it's fairly easy to buy fragrance related things for them, but when you don't know them, I'd say it's harder. I have a lot of friends that, do like fragrance, but then I also have friends that don't necessarily like fragrance. And also I've been noticing, a pattern with some people that they have migraines. So heavy fragrances or even certain fragrances that are a bit more sharp in scent trigger their headaches. Or even, people that have had allergic reactions to certain, fragrances. So I guess my first don't would be, if you're thinking about buying a fragrance for someone, don't kind of go into that. Well, don't go into that without knowing that person very well. I think whether it's, personal fragrance, or even home fragrance, have an understanding of what it is they like. Or if they even like fragrance at all. Like I said, it could be like a medical thing like migraines, but know them pretty well before you do that, because I think fragrance, obviously, I really like fragrance, but not everyone is as crazy about fragrance as I am, and I take that in mind. So I would just kind of say, before you buy fragrance for someone, even if it's a fragrance that you yourself like, make sure it's something that, one, is compatible with them, and that, two, medically they don't have any issues with. So number 2 kind of falls in not quite that vein, but in the sense of like fragrance and the public. So my second, I guess, do and don't. Do wear fragrance to the office, but don't be heavy-handed with fragrance, and also don't wear fragrances that are really heavy in an office setting, right? So a lot of people work, a 9 to 5 in an office, and some offices are bigger than others, but I think we've all been in a space where somebody had on too much, or a guy had on too much aftershave, or a woman had on like just a lot of fragrance in a confined office, or even like in an elevator. I don't know if anyone has ever been in an elevator with someone who has on a really heavy fragrance, or where they put on too much of it. And it's like, you can't wait to get off that elevator because you literally feel suffocated. So my first don't would be, like I said, don't be too heavy-handed with fragrance, and also be mindful of, if you're at work in an office or where you're going to be in a small space, like some scents are very acute, they're sharper than others. So just be aware of that. However, if you do work in an office and you do want to, put on fragrance, wear something a little lighter, or if you're, in a space where, you have a larger space to be there, be mindful of that too, because when you're in like close quarters with other people, if they wear a lot of fragrance and you do too, it can be a bit much during the course of a work day. So just sort of be mindful of that. The next one is when you're trying perfume samples. As you know, if you've watched this channel for any length of time, I'm very big on saying that you need to test fragrances out before you necessarily buy them, as you've heard me say a million times on the channel. The only time I ever blind bought a fragrance was during 2020, because, you couldn't go in stores. So thankfully with perfume samples, it's pretty easy to do because they have the papers that you spray, or sometimes you can spray them on yourself. But in that same vein, be mindful of the fact that other people may want to, because I've seen people, like when they have the testers out, just like spray like practically all their pulse points, and it's really unfair to other people that would like to just kind of spray that scent to kind of see how it is. So if they have the paper right there, spray it on the paper, and if it's like still wet, like maybe put it on your wrist to see how it'll break down on you. But don't go spraying, on your neck, on your, with the store tester, because they're going to have to replace that tester, and it's not fair to other people who may want to try it. And I've actually seen this done. I was in Ulta. This was like probably like December. It was around, Christmas shopping time, like, late Christmas shopping time. And I saw this woman take a tester, and she was like practically spraying all her pulse points. And I'm like, well, I guess you might as well buy the bottle now, So, just to be mindful of that. Also, a quick segue with cosmetic samples, like with testers. Like I said, now this one's not fragrance related, but I've also seen this done. Please, if it's a lipstick sample, do not put it on your lips. Please don't do that. Like, test it on your hand. Now I saw this one done a couple weeks ago, and I was just kind of like, wow. So, don't do that. I mean, because just for the sake of not spreading anything along, just don't. Also, for my next one and my last one, when you go and you're curious about fragrance, especially if fragrance is something new that you're getting an interest in, don't be afraid to ask questions, because, like stores in like Ulta, or even if you go in a store that's devoted solely to fragrance, like a Fragrance Depot or I believe it's Perfumania it's called, or a fragrance outlet, anything like that, ask questions. A lot of the salespeople, they're great references, they're great resources, because, this is what they do. They know a lot about the fragrances. They can tell you, different things about it. However, that being said, if it's around like on a weekend or like the holidays where it's a very high volume time, be cognizant of that, because, if they have a store full of people, they're obviously not going to be able to answer questions in, like the same way that they would just like on a regular Monday, like on an off season. So if you are delving into fragrance and you're trying to learn a little bit about that, try to go at a time where it's not such a high volume, even if you get to like, the mall, like on an early Saturday morning, something like that, where the people really have time to, help you and to answer your questions. Because, I've worked in retail, and it, like during high volume times, it's very hard to, be able to help everyone all at once. And then especially if someone has like a lot of questions, and then you have someone who's ready to check out, also depending upon how like staffed that store is. So, if you are breaking into fragrance, yeah, I would definitely say if you, want to, just kind of like go to these stores and kind of ask questions, make sure that it's at a time where it's not such a high volume. So one, you can get the help you need, but two, you're not inconveniencing staff. So, and with that is pretty much just what I wanted to pop on here and just talk about just a little bit, more of like the do's and don'ts that I've noticed, just an updated version. So I plan on posting a video next week too. I do have another unboxing planned in the future. And yeah, I plan on doing some more fragrance reviews. There have been some really good ones that came out. As you might have seen a couple weeks ago, I did the Destiny de Balmain, which is a brand new fragrance. So I plan on, trying to do reviews of fragrances right when they come out, so that if anyone is, on the fence about buying them but haven't seen any reviews, I can kind of help with that. That way, you have my honest opinion. By all means, do smell these fragrances for yourself, but that way you're not just kind of going into it blindly. So with that, thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you all soon.